do the next two. So we got 4 and 3.
All
Who do you
right,
have?
yeah. So, well, Subliners are my fifth, so I'll go for fourth. It's the Mutineers. I think that I like maybe it's contentious. I still put the Huntsmen over the Mutineers after this past weekend, but I do still think that Toronto series, you do have to mention it. Unfortunately, I hate bringing up competitive integrity stuff here. But Florida, I think we've talked about this previously with Florida's performance, right? They've been one of the more insane teams at online events. They have been really, really strong since like not only like I think Pharaoh was the first kind of like injection of life onto this team after the whole Pristini thing, but then obviously Awakening joining the team pushed them to another competitive level at a lot of these events. I don't think you can throw out the fact that they did win so many events despite the fact that it's online. I know a lot of people want to take that away from them, but I think it has to be included. The reason why they're fourth is because I think their more recent performances, I would still bet on the big three before I would bet on the Mutineers in champs.
That is a solid point. Considering the entire season, that is the only reason why I have them flipped.
Okay.
That is the only reason why. And here's the thing. So this past weekend, they both only got 10 points. Florida and the Huntsmen, right? They both faltered this weekend. They both showed signs of weakness. Chicago certainly has their reasons. The Mutineers didn't look like that championship team that we had been gassing up in previous weeks, being the best online team, cementing
you're
themselves.
Mutineers.
Right? Like I was on the Mutineers train. I was. And in a way, I still am. I will say that they are still a favorite. If you were to name 4 favorites, I think the top 4 in both of our lists are ones that people would point to as champs favorites.
Yeah.
For the entire season, remember the Mutineers also did have success on land. They did make it to a final. They did have that battle of the brothers when Prestini was playing in Florida, and they shocked the CDL by beating Chicago in Atlanta, making it to a final. So they did have some land success. People forget about that because their online success, it's almost like a tale of two parts with Florida, with the bringing in of Awakening and Pharaoh, etc. It looks like this team is a completely different entity than they were on land, but they still had some success on land, even if they weren't a top 4 team, according to people, because Minnesota was in the mix back then. But they have had so much success online for the entire season. Beyond that, I have to put them above the Huntsmen for that reason. And the Huntsmen, meanwhile, have not had as much success, even though they did make a final in week 11. They have won an online tournament. But beyond that, they have had some very disappointing results. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe in them going into champs. This is simply a grade on their season as a whole. So that's why I put Florida. Maybe it's even a smidge ahead. It's not a wide margin, Emily. It's by a touch, maybe even by a hair. But Florida gets the edge for me in that third spot.
I mean, I think when we're getting into the top 4, I think you and I obviously, as people can tell, have the same top 4 regardless of order. And I think I think the Mutineers are probably the one you could argue the least as the top team. But in terms of the Huntsmen and the Mutineers, I think it really comes down to your internal criteria. So like I can't disagree with you. I do think on the whole, the Huntsmen are a better team. I am also betting on them a bit more to show up at champs because I think this is a roster that will show up at champs. And obviously that is not just based that is like a little bit nebulous, right? Because it's based on intangibles from watching these players perform in other games, not just Modern Warfare. But I do think that I like this lineup a lot. I think they can succeed. I think they can definitely be title contenders. Envoy has been one of my favorite players to watch this entire year, honestly. And yeah, I mean, I think they have the intelligence and the skill to win at champs. Of the 3 teams that I think will be really vying for that title, I think they have the like I see them winning it the least out of those three, which is obviously the FaZe, the Empire, and the Huntsman, the big three that we've been talking about all year.
So we have 2 spots left, Emily. Give us your number 2 and number 1.
Okay, so my number 2 is Dallas. My number 1 is FaZe. It's actually super close, honestly. I love both of these teams. I really like watching both of them play despite all of the issues, despite all of the online versus LAN banter. These two teams are designed differently, but I've really appreciated watching both of them. The Empire, we talked about how I actually think they were handed a bit of the short end of the stick due to the way that points worked for the first week of league play. It took them until the past 2 events or something to catch up, which is almost an entire season, despite performing really pretty consistently well throughout. I think this is a team, despite the fact that people want to call them onliners. I think this is a team that still won on LAN and still performed well on LAN, and it is very well designed to have their veterans, especially if they're performing well, make the most of young players like Shotzi, right, who is also an MVP candidate. And then FaZe, as we talked about previously in this event, the reason why they're number 1 for me, consistently top performers to the point where if they're not winning a final, we're like, what happened to FaZe? They're declining because they set such a high bar for themselves from the get-go in this season. And they've been consistently at the top, regardless of whether it's been LAN, regardless of whether it's been online. They were the team that looked the most comfortable in this game from week 1. Specifically, I think because their SMGs are just insane.
Yeah.
And this is for the most part, outside of some wonkiness towards the end here, it's been an SMG game. And yeah, I mean, I love watching both of these teams. I'm giving the edge to FaZe for the reasons that I said. But these are my 2 favorites for sure.
I labored over this. I really did.
It's hard.
No, but all the points you're making make so much sense. And on any other day, I would have the exact same opinion because it's so logical. And I'll be honest, I went Dallas number 1, Atlanta number 2. The only reason that I could think of that they deserve that spot was because they won 3 and Atlanta won 2. That was the differentiating factor for me. Because if you look at both teams have not placed anywhere less than a semifinal appearance all season in every single tournament. The Atlanta FaZe,
except for, but that's not a tournament. Never mind.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to be except for the league play, which we totally
league play.
To
Dallas
about.
Sucked. They were terrible. They went 0 yes, right. But then they made a final in London, and then they won their next tournament in week 4, right? So they quickly rebounded from that. The FaZe have a lot of losses in the final, and that impacted me for sure. I think that when I looked at that, I said they have a losing record in finals matches. I think they're 2-4 in finals appearances. Dallas has less finals appearances, but they're 3-1. So it's 4 finals appearances versus 6. So if you're in the boat to say finals appearances should weigh more and Atlanta should be the best team in the league, I'm not really going to argue there. I think that this is one of those one day you can make a case for Atlanta, the next day you can make the case for Dallas. I guess in terms of winning percentage in the final, that's where my differentiator was, because you can pick apart the teams, right? You can pick apart Simps Records and the Tiny Terrors and the youth and the fascinating team that Atlanta has versus the experience of Clayster and Crim6 and the rookies that they've been able to mold on that team. There's so many different arguments you could take for both teams, and really many people would consider them 1A and 1B. But at the end of the day, for me, the 3 chips was really the differentiator there, that they were able to get 1 more in less finals appearances than Atlanta. So that's why I put Dallas first here.
I don't disagree with anything you said. Honestly, if you take away that first week, right, those 20 points, these teams are completely tied.
They are. They are. And maybe I should have put more weight on that first week where they absolutely sucked.
I don't think you should.
Just
They've long since recovered. Let's be real.
yeah, they've recovered
I feel
long
like
since.
people still bring that up though, right? They're like, well, they sucked at the beginning of the season. And it's like, they did really well in their second tournament, actually.
Yeah, like
Like,
whoop-de-doo.